The first thing that I want to remind you of, and many of you have heard me say this numerous times, but when you start to craft your marketing message, when you're sitting down and you are writing your headline, when you're writing your lead, you're writing the opening for your marketing campaign, you're writing the body, you're writing the offer, you're designing these elements. Don't think like a copywriter. Don't go into copywriter mode. Don't put your copywriter cap on. Don't try to think of what are all the whiz bang cool copy words and phrases that I can use. See, because the reality is this. The reality is that what most marketers think of, and I want you to listen to me here, what most marketers think of when they think of copywriting buzzwords and phrases, they're really thinking about the kind of the old school hyped up, bloated, hyperbolic adjectives and phrases. What tends to happen when entrepreneurs and marketers start thinking like copywriters, or start really, what I should really say is they start trying to write copy instead of trying to write a compelling marketing message. Instead of trying to present an argument for their mechanism, for their unique mechanism, for their solution, they start writing copy. And there's a huge difference, right? Because good copy doesn't sound like copy. Good copy doesn't read like copy. It doesn't feel like copy. It doesn't feel hyperbolic. It doesn't feel like it's hype or it's exaggeration. And that hype and that exaggeration often comes from the use of kind of these fluffy, over-the-top adjectives and adverbs. And so I want you to make sure that like you proactively get in this frame of mind where when you sit down to craft your marketing, you are sitting down to craft a marketing argument, a message that persuades by changing your prospect's beliefs, right? And it might be, depending on if you're using an email, it might be one single belief. If you're writing a blog post or an essay, it might be one single belief. If you're crafting a video that's part of your content marketing strategy, or your content delivery strategy, it might be a single belief, or you might be crafting a VSL, you might be crafting a long form sales letter, you might be crafting an outline for a webinar where you've got to change all of the necessary beliefs in your prospect's mind. The thing that you're not doing is you're not trying to write copy. You're trying to craft a compelling marketing message. And today, what is a compelling marketing message or an effective marketing message is very, very different from what it was back in the day, back when a lot of the copy instructional courses and books were designed. And so you just have to be careful with that. Remember that ultimately what we're doing, and everybody should have seen, should be somewhat familiar with this. This is the timeline that I always use for every single marketing campaign. Does not matter what the marketing funnel model is, whether you're using a webinar, multi-part video sequence, VSL, does not matter whether it is a VSL to a strategy session, whether it's a long form sales letter to an order form, whether it's a webinar to an order form, does not matter. This is the timeline that I always use. You know by this point that this is what we would call the selling portion, and this is the marketing portion. This is really where we present the SIN offer, right? So the selling that we're doing is, in the end, it's, call it the last 25% or so of your marketing message. No matter how, like I said, whether your VSL is 10 minutes, whether your VSL is 40 minutes, it's usually the last 20-25%, give or take, where all we're doing is presenting the offer. Everything that we are doing prior to that, everything that we are doing leading up to that, right? All of this in here is all marketing. And this is where we are establishing the beliefs in the mind of the prospect. And so just as a reminder, so that you understand, what we're doing here is we're presenting a big idea. We're presenting a big marketing idea. And really, this whole big marketing idea concept. And let me just do this really quick. I want to get rid of this. This whole big marketing idea concept, what this is really, to really kind of boil this down, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to get to the critiques for you guys and gals, and then get you out of here on time. But what we're talking about here is that we're not simply just making a big, bold, audacious promise. You know, it's interesting, for what it's worth, without going off on, again, a crazy tangent here. For what it's worth, you know, there's been a lot of talk lately of how crafting, you know, it's becoming tougher and tougher to craft compelling and compliant copy for things like Facebook and YouTube and AdWords. You know, more and more we're hearing stories of people getting booted, their accounts getting shut off, their accounts getting blacklisted. Very recently, you know, all the Agora companies have had problems, both on Google and now again Facebook, and a lot of it comes back to compliance. And so there's been some people that are talking about, like, you know, you've got to learn how to write compliant copy for Facebook, and being able to write compliant copy is much more important than just being able to write compelling copy. That's what they've been saying. And here is my stance on this, and you'll see how this fits in with the big idea in just a second, that it goes without saying that you need to understand how to write compliant copy, right? Like compliant with Facebook, compliant with YouTube. It doesn't matter how good your stuff is if it's not compliant, it's either not going to get approved, or you're eventually going to get yourself into hot water. Either way, it's not good. And so it goes without saying that you need to continue to understand what is compliant and what isn't compliant on Facebook. And there are some kind of general compliance things, right? Like you can't promote, let's say, tobacco, right? That's like a general, but then there are certain things that are specific to various industries and niches, right? There are some things like, you know, they don't like, you can't make unsubstantiated claims, blah blah blah. This isn't a course on or a training on compliance. But the thing that I want you to understand is this: that more and more, what those traffic platforms are cracking down on, what they are cracking down on that will get you into hot water, are blatant promises, are right, and are these over-exaggerated, in-your-face promises. And really, more and more, what we're seeing now are just promises in general, promises of a result, no matter what the marketplace is. Promise of growing more hair, promise of a greener lawn, promise of making more money, promise of growing your business, promise of profits, right? Promise of successful stock trades, promise of X amount of weight loss, promise of losing inches, any of those things. Promises they do not like. Those platforms do not like. And so, not even talking about exaggerated or hyped up promises, just promises they do not like. And that's why you're seeing this trend where people are going from, you know, these promises, how to lose 15 pounds, to more case study oriented copy, right? How Bob lost 15 pounds, how one middle-aged man from Illinois lost 15 pounds, right? Because that's not a promise, it's more of a story, it's more of a case study. I'm sharing that with you in this context because it has made the big idea that much more valuable, because the big idea is not based around a big hyped up promise. It's something new, it's something different, it's something newsworthy, it's something intellectually interesting, as well as having a transformation attached to it. But it's not some hyped up, in your face promise. And so the big ideas become even more valuable because the big idea done right is compliant. And so what you've got is something that is compliant and is compelling, and it works to grab attention. And so